Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. I'm Eric Hansen, VP of Industry Leadership at OTT.X, and your host for the series. On behalf of the team at OTT.X, I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning for the series where we bring you thoughtful, thought-provoking, insightful presentations from across a broad spectrum of OTT-related topics from thought leaders across our industry. Today, we're very fortunate to have with us not one, but two CEO co-founders of their respective companies, Jason Kassin of FIlmTrack and Mike Hurst of Exactuals. Jason Kassin is a lifelong computer engineer and leading expert in rights management and content management solutions for the media and entertainment sector. He co-founded FIlmTrack in the late 90s after being asked to design contract administration software for some of the oldest and most respected names in international film distribution. Since its inception, he has evolved the company into an extensive ecosystem that encompasses content creation, distribution rights, and monetization. Prior to FIlmTrack, he built his own successful software consulting business while appearing in films and television programs. He also sold film and TV pilot scripts to DreamWorks, Fox, NBC, and Paramount. I've also learned that he is also just now that he's also an extreme skier. He's a busy guy, that Jason Kassin. Mike Hurst is a software industry veteran. He spent many years at Oracle helping traditional software companies launch software such as software as a service offerings. During his tenure at Oracle, Mike was exposed to the inefficiencies surrounding residuals distribution in the media and entertainment industry. He began to develop relationships and insights that would form the basis for Exactuals. Exactuals is a SaaS company that is modernizing the way the entertainment industry makes residuals, royalties, and marketplace payments, among other complex transactions. Mike has led sales teams at Fortune 500 companies such as Oracle and Sprint Nextel, and has built distribution organizations across both the US and India. I also want to thank FIlmTrack and Exactuals for participating in our webinar series today. FIlmTrack have been great supporters of OTT.X over the years, supporting many of our events and are active members in discussions and working groups. I know we're all looking forward to their talk today, entitled Rights Management in Today's Age. With that, I'll turn it over to Jason Kassin and Mike Hurst of FIlmTrack and Exactuals. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, Eric. Should we be able to turn on our video? It's saying our host has disabled. And that's fine if not. I assure you I look better in my headshot than on video anyway.
You know, that's a frustrating deal, isn't it?
I like my Joaquin Phoenix, somewhere between Joaquin Phoenix and Zach Galifianakis look.
I'm telling you, Jason, I've known you about 9 years now. You've never looked better.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. But thanks for having us. We'll get the video sorted in a little bit. And thanks, everybody, for coming to this webinar. We've got quite a few participants out there, so we're looking forward to chatting with you. And we're also looking forward to answering your questions. And we've got a fun program set up for today, so thanks a lot.
Yeah, if I may jump in, Jason. So the last time and the only time previously that Jason and I had the pleasure of being together for your group was right around 20 months ago. And it was at an in-person event back when those existed at the Skirball Center. And we gave a not totally dissimilar discussion around rights management and the state of the industry. But what's important about that talk 20 months ago or so was immediately after Jason and I broke out to the outside area where people were having lunch and started talking about the potential of bringing the companies together in some capacity. Now, we were just in the process of closing our acquisition by City National Bank. So Exactuals is now a wholly owned subsidiary of City National Bank, which is the primary entertainment bank for agencies, business managers, talent, and now we're working on the enterprise as well. And I thought it would be a potentially really interesting discussion. And if you hadn't heard the news, the good news is that deal got done. And so FIlmTrack is also now a wholly owned subsidiary of City National Bank, which makes us, sister companies as part of the same portfolio. And we work together constantly and have a lot of exciting things coming down the pike for the market in 2020 and 2021. So thank you to this group for giving us that opportunity and spurring the discussion. And, certainly thrilled to be invited back for another talk.
You are the location of our first big date, so that's very exciting. We'll always remember it fondly.
Hey guys, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
I am really frustrated right now with what I'm seeing on the platform. I'm literally looking at something that says allow participants to show video, and you're telling me that you're not allowed to.
Is there maybe a similar thing that says allow panelists? Are we categorized differently?
Yeah, let's.
I just did a thing that says show video.
There you go.
It looks like I'm there on my triple dot. Yeah.
Triple dot. I don't have that.
In the corner, in the upper.
All right,
Yep, there you go. Hey, everybody.
This all worked in rehearsal.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I still have a
So
business
y'all are back on, and I'm going to make the rest of us go away. And please take it from here.
All right, will do. So I think we've staged it well. I was going to spend a little bit of time on introductions, but Eric totally nailed it. The only other thing I would say about Exactuals for people's background is, as he mentioned, we focus on residuals and royalties and similar payment structures. And so we've got a lot of exposure in the music industry as well. So on the film and TV side, we work for the Screen Actors Guild, we work for the Writers Guild, and we have about 600 different studios that process their residuals through Exactuals based on our channel relationship with entertainment partners. And then on the music side, we've got right about 100 publishers, record labels, and PROs that use our platform for both payments and reporting. Founded in 2011, acquired by City National in 2018, based in Westwood, though currently based mostly from everybody's house.
That's right. And FilmTrack, for those of you who know, we are a rights management solution with a strong financial components as well. We manage our clients' rights, their film and television rights primarily, but also consumer products and other IP. And we manage that whole life cycle of the rights licensing through the whole contract life cycle and distribution of the content. We also, and adjacent to that, and we'll talk about how important that is in the current pandemic, but we also handle all of the financial components related to that distribution. So all the license fees, all the royalties, the participations, and all of the functions of revenue recognition and reconciling with your accounting systems that arise from your rights management. And that is why there's such a strong interaction between what we do and what Exactuals does, and why CNB is sort of the parent to all that. And I don't know, Mike, when you let me know if you want me to show a little video that explains all that, we could try that. Although with the technical things, we'll see if it works.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea. So Jason will show now a quick 2-minute video about FilmTrack to help set the stage and what that business does. And then we'll get into what I would consider to be sort of like a live podcast interview with, we'll do 2 or 3 Q&A breaks throughout. So go for it, Jason.
Oh, 1 second here. And never mind the man behind the curtain, but we're going to try to do a little, hold on 1 second. Where did I? Yes. All right, here we go. And if the quality's not good, blame the internet. Okay, share sound, share that, share. Here we go.
If you're a company in the entertainment media industry, you know how complex rights have become. In addition to traditional outlets, people today are consuming media on everything from smartphones and tablets to computers and smart TVs, with access to a host of different on-demand streaming services, numerous digital stores, and countless websites serving up your content to every corner of the world. And if you're relying on a legacy rights management system to try and keep track of it all, you might as well be trying to take a horse and buggy to the moon. Because the truth is, legacy systems just weren't created to keep up with today's complex and fast-changing digital marketplace. And that means you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table. Thankfully, there's FilmTrack. FilmTrack is the simplest, most powerful end-to-end rights management solution on the planet. Not only is FilmTrack built to find every possible source of revenue available to your library, but it also handles the complex financials that come along with today's new age of streaming. You'll know that you're selling everything you have to sell and getting every dollar available, while also ensuring that all royalties and participations are being split and paid accurately. This is nearly impossible to do on legacy systems and requires multiple platforms to manage it all, but FilmTrack does it all in one easy-to-use application. And since FilmTrack is completely cloud-based, it integrates seamlessly with your current systems and can scale and adapt quickly to the evolving needs of your business and to the evolving rights landscape. You can also rest assured that your data will never be compromised because FilmTrack uses the highest level of security and is backed by one of the most trusted banks in the world, Hollywood's bank, City National Bank. Through this acquisition and others, City National Bank is creating the future of servicing the entertainment industry by providing the first ever platform for all things entertainment. This is the way a rights management system is supposed to work. Rights, availabilities, royalties, participations, contracts, real-time analytics, document creation, every phase of the intellectual property lifecycle all under one roof. So whether you're a head of sales or distribution who wants to maximize revenue and never miss another rights window, or a CTO who needs a platform with the highest level of security but open and flexible APIs, if you're the chief legal counsel and need to ensure that you're in compliance with every detail of your talent contracts, or a CFO who needs to make complex and dynamic revenue calculations, if you're a company in the entertainment media industry that wants to take your business to new heights, it's time to ditch the horse and buggy. It's time to upgrade to FilmTrack.
There we go. That's the world premiere of our video. So, you know, it's who says there's no new entertainment being produced right now? That's huge. This is a big, big premiere.
Very well done. I love it. Well, great. So let's jump into the discussion a little bit. When I was thinking about it today and the way that streaming has evolved over the last 10 years and the impact that it's had on the rights management portion of our industry, I think you could argue that this group has been the most impacted and their day-to-day operations have changed the most of really any. But I don't want to go so macro at this point when I think everybody is really interested on what has happened in the industry in the past 3 months. So I want to set the stage a little bit. Let's walk it back to early March. Clearly the news is growing stronger and stronger about the potential of a stay-at-home order, of a work from home. I know for me, the sort of epiphany moment was I heard through the grapevine that Harvard Westlake, one of our preeminent schools here, was announcing it was closing. And to me, I just knew within 12 hours the rest of that system would shut down. So in that moment, you're hearing the news, we're going to be working from home. As someone who is a leader in the rights management industry, what are your immediate reactions?
Well, you know, two things sort of happen simultaneously that I think share in the impact. One is obviously production is either getting shut down or shut down at that point as well. And that's a problem for, so many reasons, not to, mention all the people who are out of work because of that. So that affects one part of the supply chain. And then, of course, people are staying at home. And so, that has, as we've seen, some very profound impacts on a macro level. They're not going to the theaters. They're not doing shared entertainment. But we're seeing, I think, almost a 30% spike in over-the-top services, whether it's in the form of subscription or non-subscription services. But, certainly in the early part of the pandemic, it was, the jokes on social media was like, I've been through all of Netflix already. What's next? And so what I was seeing from our customers almost, immediately, where we getting calls from, clients overseas and clients in the US, and we'll talk a little bit later about the delta between what we're seeing in Europe now and what we're seeing in the US, but immediately saying, I need to run massive availability reports. I need to know all of my avails, and I need to know them by a lot of different, what I'll call vectors or quadrants, because there's such a need for new content, or content, doesn't have to be new content, for all of these services, whether it's the HBO Max or whether it's, obviously the big ones, Amazon and iTunes and Hulu, or there's literally thousands, as we all know, all over the globe. And you need to know whether your content is available, and not just on a onesie twosie, because the providers were saying, I need your entire library. Tell me what in your library is available to me. I'm a Brazilian VOD platform. I do Portuguese language only. I don't care about Spanish language, and I need this window of time. You need to get that answer to me within, now. And we're seeing a lot of that. So we were immediately inundated with availability requests. And a different type of availability request than was traditional. The other thing that happened is this happened right about the time that the film market season is about to take off. South by Southwest, I think it was a week before South by Southwest. I was actually supposed to go there with one of our clients to do a panel with City National Bank.
And just real quick, to set that stage. So
Yeah.
the way I often described FilmTrack when I was pitching it to City National and RBC was, if you guys go to the Toronto Film Festival, which they sponsor, and you see groups of people in the corner huddled around a computer making deals, very good chance they're running FilmTrack to record that. But,
Yes.
but at the time, up until a few months ago, that in-person interaction was still largely the norm, right? And people were meeting at the film festivals, conducting business in person, shaking hands, and then using the FilmTrack system to execute the agreement. And obviously that radically changes. I think you're about to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the fabric of this industry, and there have been many attempts to change it, but the culture of this industry has been very much built around the tentpoles of various both film festivals and film markets and television festivals and markets, whether it's MIPCOM, NATP, the Berlin Film Festival, Toronto Film Festival, of course, Cannes, and Sundance. And while those have not been able to, it's probably the single biggest impact, along with things like South by Southwest, which although not specifically a film and TV festival, has a lot of film and TV content being licensed. So what happens at these festivals, or those who don't know, sure, Cannes is a wonderful time where, movie stars and diamonds and all that kind of stuff, and there's new movies being shown, but what's happening behind the scenes, and overpriced food, but what's happening behind the scenes is content is being traded, basically. It's a bazaar in the traditional sense of that word, and films are being financed, films are being licensed, new films are being licensed, both for different markets, different territories, different languages, and deals are being conducted both within the market for one or two titles, new titles, or for massive title sets. And so everything about that industry had to be very quickly transplanted into the virtual realm. And some of that's been somewhat successful. They just wrapped up the virtual Cannes last week, about a month or so delayed from when it was the physical Cannes. And I think it's really going to accelerate some trends that were already happening, which is that instead of waiting for certain moments of the year to release content, we're seeing the content get released all the time. We're seeing content get licensed all the time, and we're seeing that people can conduct this business virtually, but you need the systems obviously to be able to give you those answers instantaneously. But there is something lost. I mean, there is something to be said, of course, for having that moment of sitting down in a cafe, wherever you are in Berlin or south of France or Toronto, and discussing the film in a very easy way with your potential licensee. That, we're trying really hard as an industry to support that. But it's challenging in a virtual realm, but I think we're getting there. And certainly the deals are still being conducted. If you pick up Variety today or any of the industry things, you'll see that deals are getting done, big deals, films are getting done, films are getting made, television is getting made, it's just getting made very differently. And right now, obviously, production is pretty much still at a near standstill in the US, but there are other forms of production happening.
Now, are we starting to see in other parts of the world that have maybe gone a little bit, had more time or gone a little further in their response to COVID-19, is production starting to resume in certain markets?
Yeah. So we were talking to one of our German clients of now about 3-4 weeks ago, and they'd already started up production again. And what this, and they're also a model for how we might be able to do it here in terms of regular testing and keeping track of who's in the crew and all the contact tracing and so forth. So they have, internationally, there have been production started. There have been differences in the way the production is approached, which may alter, just like streaming and non-ad supported platforms altered the way content was actually created and the rhythms of the content. Now we're seeing fewer crowd scenes, right? Maybe more CGI.
Sure. What
What can you do with fewer people? What can you do with visual effects? And so I think you'll see the result of this. Obviously, it's a lagging indicator, maybe a year from now or so, of the content that was made during the pandemic. And there was some content being made. And obviously, there's a lot of virtual content being made. In fact, our good friend Ed Claris has a piece in the LA Times today about a virtual content that is not truly licensed. There's a lot of people doing really great work on online, with these Zoom informal talks and things like that, but they're using unlicensed music. and they're using unlicensed content, and the creators have to get compensated, and they have to figure that out. And so there's a mechanism that is needed there. But look, this is an unusual time, and we need to make sure that people can see the content they need to see, and that licenses are honored. But at the same time, we don't want to put people in an unnecessary bind.
And you hinted at it earlier. So clearly, with no festivals, deals are having to be done more remotely. There's going to be more Zooms. There are going to be different platforms. In the question of what is currently being licensed, there's a little bit of a vacuum, right? Because much of the content we would have assumed would have been landing now is delayed. So what's happening with back catalog? Is it the case that, just a massive range of content that hadn't been licensed for the past 5 to 10 years is suddenly hot again? Yeah,
catalog licenses, if you've got a catalog right now, you're in a pretty good spot, particularly if you have premier catalog, if you will, maybe some award-winning stuff, things like that. Or if you have niche catalog, Korean language stuff, Swedish language stuff, there's a micro market for probably pretty much every kind of content. But library content now is very valuable. And there are platforms that just need content, quickly, including the larger platforms, which we're counting on the supply chain supplying them. I read yesterday or a few days ago, and I'm sure folks have seen this. Netflix is now saying, send us your unproduced scripts. We'll make it. As a former screenwriter, I'm like, oh, maybe now's my chance. 15 years later. Right. I think there's an interesting opportunity, as there are with all these sort of giant cultural events and giant historical trends, that we'll see some interesting content come out of this. It'll have to find its own level, but there'll probably be a massive, when the floodgates open, there's going to be so much content produced, but again, produced a certain way.
Right. Yeah. Very interesting. So I don't want to get too deep into infomercial mode, but one thing that always struck me about FIlmTrack was the ease of execution of avails and ultimately a contract for a FIlmTrack user versus, I'll say, a legacy system user. So, many studios that aren't on FIlmTrack are managing through Excel spreadsheets, disparate databases, information spread out globally. Can you give me some sense of the ability of a FIlmTrack user to sort of weather this storm and get business done versus a legacy system user who was in person a lot of the time and reliant upon, legal work and all of that effort?
Sure. Well, the most important thing about FIlmTrack, sorry, that's my 16-year-old daughter going off to get her permit. So this is a very big moment. There goes my insurance. But no, I think the main thing about FIlmTrack is it's cloud-based, right? So, when we transitioned to a work from home posture, our users were able to, immediately continue their use or even enhance their use, from anywhere in the world that they have internet access, which is pretty much everywhere now. So the ubiquitous of availability is critical. And then that the system is designed always, from its origin, has always been around availability. We started in the international film distribution space and got into television and networks and so forth. So it's really at its core, finding out what content is available, what can I license at any given point in time. And so we try to answer that question as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible. The level of how conservative that answer is, because by the way, this is not a binary question of something available or something not available. Well, it's sort of available. You have a non-exclusive right, but not in Puerto Rico for English speaking, but Puerto Rico for Spanish speaking, but only through the year 2021. And then only if you get approval from the director because he happens to have a home in Puerto Rico. And so he has a final approval over that. These things are actually encodable in the system and can be honored from the standpoint of an availability calculation. And you can sort of dial the level of severity, if you will, around how aggressive you want your avails to be, because sometimes you may be looking to relicense something, sometimes you're looking to license something that's never been licensed before, and what we're seeing now is language availability is very important. Where it used to be in the traditional census, tell me what territory, what right, what date for the content, and divide that content. Obviously makes it very complex by series, season, episode, and when you get into episodic content. But now we're seeing a lot more language-based availability. We've always had language-based contracts because the platforms themselves are language-oriented, right? There may be a Russian language platform in Germany. As I mentioned earlier in that example, there are specific, particularly in South America, the Caribbean, and parts of the Pacific, there are satellite footprints and different, obviously this is an interesting study of history as well, of why Portuguese is spoken in certain parts of South America and why French is spoken in certain parts of Polynesia. But the licenses follow that. And you may just have a French language Pacific footprint, and knowing what's available. So when you run your avails, you may just say, oh, it's available. Well, or it's not available, but is it available for French in Polynesia, right? Is it available, for sub or dub in this language? And more importantly, do I have the sub or dub, because that will affect my ability to license.
So to that end, way back when, kind of 2009, 2010, when I was still at Oracle with my co-founder, Jason Hiller, we were doing work for SAG at the time, and we were becoming interested in the whole concept of rights management, and for our part, residuals, because of the complexity of the deals that were getting done, and that the introduction of streaming and electronic sell-through and the globalization, the global availability of cable television, much of which wants to license American content, was painting this picture of more complexity than the industry was used to, and massive volumes that the industry maybe was not ready for. And so our business was founded to optimize and automate the residuals flow, so that if we went from 600,000 SAG residual checks in 2010 to 6 million in 2020, the market could keep pace. It seems to me that the dynamic is similar in terms of the rights management for distribution deals that FIlmTrack executes. Can you talk to me about just the different ways in which the contracts have become more complicated, other than taking it down,
it's interesting that you talk about residuals as well, because it all ties into that. The deals have become much more complex. The nature of the deals have changed, and then the volume of the deals have changed. So this, taken together, this is made for a very complex ecosystem. And I'll explain what I mean by this. In older deals, a lot of deals were done royalty-based deals or minimum guarantee deals. I'll give you this amount, and then we'll consume against that guarantee, and you'll report to me how the title is doing, and then I'll consume against that. And that was, for many years, that was kind of the standard, or a straight distribution fee. And wise folks in certain parts of the industry would know that the minimum guarantee is the only guarantee. Good luck getting those overages, but it did happen. What's changed now, because of the platforms, we're seeing more dynamic fee type deals, dynamic fee calculations, and they're across not just 1 or 10 titles, but an entire library. It might be thousands of titles, some of which are episodic. So multiply that thousands by 26, or however many episodes are being licensed. So you're at tens of thousands of pieces of content across these hundreds of territories, hundreds of languages, hundreds of rights. But here's where it gets complicated. Not only are the rights complicated, and here's where it ties back to Exactuals and the financials, is that all of those combinations need to be allocated at the general ledger level. You need to know, well, I'm just getting one giant invoice in for 10,000 titles, but I need to know, in order to pay my residuals properly, in order to pay my participations properly, for this one title, for Spain in Spanish, for VOD, I got a $1 million check. Well, $7.93 of that check was dedicated to this title. You can't just divine that number. It has to come from various revenue recognition rules, various allocation rules. And that's really what we focused on the last few years as the industry changed, is devising this allocation methodology and devising a fee calculation. What I mean by fee calculation is, they say, well, the deal is set up such that it's going to be this, for premium titles, it's this number of dollars per click for the first 6 months. For the second 6 months, it's going to be based on the number of premium content subscribers. And then we have to report once a month, and then we're going to true up afterwards. And they're as creative as people can be. So it's not necessarily about a view. It might be a view, it might be a click, but it might be a number of subscribers. But it's not just a flat tier. It's very, these deals are made very complex, and then they have to be informed by the reporting. So it's exciting times.
Yeah. No question. It's interesting. On the residual side, the payments that we make are largely governed by collectively bargained agreements, which are, we're in a negotiation year at the moment. Obviously, a lot of the focus from both studio side and the guild side is on streaming, but largely the complexity is these 1 or 2 or 3 large, very detailed, very complicated, but largely known agreements. And in the distribution world, to your point, I think it's more like our music industry business, which is the deal is kind of whatever you can come up with that people feel good about. And one deal can have almost nothing in common with the next, even if you're licensing the same piece of content.
That's exactly right. Everyone is unique, and it's challenging because it has to then fit back into these collective bargaining agreements, because you have to pay out, one of the things, once you do all that distribution, once all that money comes in, you've got to calculate, who do I owe what to? Right, my participants. Now, participants can be financial players, investors. They could be performers. They could be any number of people along the supply chain. A licensor.
It will be guilds.
Yeah, and guilds. It will be. Yep. And so,
unions.
Look, this is where the thesis of the whole C&D acquisition comes in. Is that this puts us on a footing to enable us to help our customers, give them more flexibility in the way to actually move these funds around and process payments and things like this. And that's really where we're headed, and where we're spending a lot of time. Quite candidly, during this interregnum period of the pandemic, we've been incredibly efficient. We're a software company. I don't know if you have this too, Mike, I'm sure, but putting an engineer in a car for an hour and a half a day turns out to be very inefficient. And they are a unique breed of people. After 30, 40 years of working with them and being one myself, I think I'm finally starting to understand. But the efficiency that we're seeing in our engineering core as we've moved to the stay-at-home posture, it won't continue forever, but it's allowed us, with the investment from the bank, to really focus on product and product initiatives. And those include integrating with Exactuals, which we're very excited about, analytics, which is going to be real exciting, where we're taking the data from FIlmTrack and flattening it into an analytics platform that people can use and do all kinds of cool reporting and move and combine data from other systems. So we have a lot of really cool initiatives that we've been able to frankly accelerate because of the combination of the acquisition and frankly the pandemic.
And I'll build on that. How do I say this properly? Our clients have always been very supportive of the future vision. Okay, if you were to ask a large studio 5 years ago, do you think you'd be paying 400,000 paper checks in the year 2020? They would have said, of course not. But change is hard, and it needs to be prioritized, and it takes time. And so, come to find yourselves in 2020, everybody agrees with the vision, but suddenly the vision's really critical, because I think everybody feels and knows that even if we get back to the office in September, we can't ever go back to a place where we assume that you're just going to be at work every day. There is a new reality where we may get another stay-at-home order at any point in time. And so the more paper-oriented processes, the more manual workflows that can be optimized and eliminated and automated suddenly are really, really, really the focus, which has been great. Right. Because the desire's always been there, but the prioritization can be difficult when there's so many competing things that large businesses need to accomplish. So certainly at the moment, the market is calling for more automation, more transparency, the ability to empower the team to do everything they used to do at the office from home, but in some cases more and faster and better. And we are absolutely sprinting at both companies with funding and support from the bank to meet the demand of the market and deliver the tools that they need to know with confidence, if we wind up going back home in November for 3 months, we're not going to miss a beat.
Yeah, and I think at Exactuals, I would imagine you're really getting this cultural trend away from, what I'll call, getting away from cash and getting away from checks. I mean, we're living we're moving towards this cashless society. That the pandemic is definitely creating that. I know personally now, when I go to the store, my first question is, can I use Apple Pay or what, whatever I got to do not to touch.
I don't want to touch stuff.
Right. So I think what you'll find on our industry is an acceleration for the work that you guys are doing on any kind of payment process, in or out, that used to be a physical check. And whether that check was run off of a giant printer or whatever. It's still physical. And so it has all the problems that the physical world presents. And there's reporting issues on it as well. But what's nice about your system and what we're contemplating together is, right now, a lot of folks in our industry on the talent side, they know what they're getting paid when they open their mailbox. In other words, they have no ability to plan based on, there's very little transparency in terms of, I'm a writer, I'm a director, I've made these 5 great films in the 90s, but I guess I'm going to get paid at some point. I'll open the mailbox. Maybe my business manager has some sense. What we're trying to help is add a level of transparency. And obviously this is a cultural thing as much as a technological thing, where folks can potentially go into a portal and see, hey, here's what next quarter is going to look like for me. I will be able to pay my son's tuition or whatever it is. So I think there's a lot of that sort of transparency is going to be accelerated by this, by the COVID effect on society. And it's, look, it's a terrible thing that we're going through. This is a once in a century thing. I think we're all kind of trying to roll with it and figure it out. And every day is different. And what we thought in March is different than today. If you ask me in March, will you be back in the office by, July 1st? I'd be like, July, oh, we'll be back in, April, May, now I just don't know when we'll be back in the office, but it doesn't stress me out because we're being efficient. We're getting the things done we need to get done. We're working for our customers and we're moving the product forward. And I think we're part of a industry movement towards, as you're talking about, towards more automation, towards better information, and all the initiatives we have, all the integrations we have, the analytics stuff we have, it's all about getting at the data faster and then making actions based on that data, calls to actions.
Yeah, and then the other layer to it is if you run a manual process or if you run a paper-based process and your volume doubles, you have to double the size of your team to keep up.
There you go.
That's just
right.
Very factual. It's a linear relationship between human effort and volume. And if you can move it to a digitized, more automated platform, you can do more with the team that you have. And I think everyone has probably had the discussion with their CFO, no matter which company you're at. The next couple of years, we're going to have to be leaner and faster, and we're going to have to do more with the team that we have as we wait out the economy and understand what the full impact is going to be on our business. So tools like FilmTrack and Exactuals can help to make much more of the work and the excellent team that people have in place today. And we're certainly feeling that. And just for what it's worth to the audience, our parent company sees it too and is absolutely backing the growth and the development to meet the moment. So that's been good. Yeah, we promised a couple of Q&A breaks, but as is always the case with you and me, Jason, we barely slow down for anything.
How'd that happen?
I don't know. It happens. So let's take a little Q&A break. If there are questions, Eric, or someone from the audience, we'd love to take a couple.
That sounds great. The way we like to do this here at the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series is give everybody a chance to join us, and we'd love to pass you the mic. So first of all, there is a little button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen that says raise your hand. So if you have a question, just go ahead and click that button and I can call on you. If you're bashful or whatever reason you don't want to talk, then that's fine too. We can take questions.
We can also
the chat. It looks like we have something here. I have a question here from Mark Roshba. Here it is. Can FilmTrack handle just partial needs like contracts and payments? I have a partner. The content rights marketplace connects buyers and sellers, but does not process payments. Does that make sense? Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Mark. So yeah, FilmTrack does the back office operations of all of the invoicing and cash receipts that emerge out of a contract, and that's kind of one of the main features of FilmTrack. I know Vueler quite well, and they're part of a string of online platforms that I think are very exciting. One of which, just full disclosure, is RightsTrade that I have a involvement in, and there's another TRX out of the UK. And they're really designed more as, those are online marketplaces. Those are platforms that are used to exchange data and let people meet and greet. FilmTrack, to be clear, is back office software for the content owner or the content buyer. It's never exposed externally. It's used as you would your accounting system or anything like that. I mean, you may choose to share certain pieces in a portal to your partners, but it's back office software. But certainly we handle all of the cash application and invoicing, royalty processing as the royalties come in and calculating what your royalties should be. I mean, said in a simple way, you enter a contract into FIlmTrack. First thing is it tells you, can you do it? Yeah, good, you know, from a conflict standpoint. Then it generates those financial components of, you know, your 20% down, 80% on delivery, whatever it is. And then it also generates those invoices and cash comes in, it allocates, applies to the invoice, you know, pretty straightforward accounting, finance stuff, I think.
It was funny, guys, I was having a conversation with some of the retailers and platforms last week about rights, and we were talking about SFOT. And the challenges that they face in trying to negotiate an SFOT deal with a content owner was they're just like couldn't understand how they didn't know what their rights were. Like, and they would literally change during the negotiation. They'd get a list of content, and it's very complicated. Language.
I've often designed rights.
Over the negotiation, it would change.
Yeah, rights. I've often said it's a quantum problem. In other words, just by looking at it, it changes. You know, like quantum mechanics, because it is this 5-dimensional model. And so, yeah, it's not, you know, it's a little Heisenberg uncertainty principle.
Let's get Heisenberg to help us solve this problem.
You know, we'll need that. Yeah, better call Saul.
I had a discussion at one point with a non-FIlmTrack user a bunch of years ago, and I was asking him, what happens if you're at the table trying to make the deal and you can't know if you have the right to close it? And he told me, well, we just do it anyways and then figure it out in legal later. And I thought, wow, you got to be fingers crossed that it works out. But if you can't get that rights and avails information at your fingertips, obviously you're still going to want to do the deal. And there's just a lot of cleanup after the fact. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, we have a couple more questions here. We've got some time.
Sure.
Okay, so this is from Olivier Jorda. I'm sorry for not pronouncing that correctly. If you're raising your hand instead, you could announce yourself, I guess. For studios and broadcasters considering consolidation and move to the cloud across finance, production, accounting, and rights, would you recommend an end-to-end big bang transformation or stage the decisions in separate phases? As an add-on to the question, what is your approach to integration with available cloud ERP systems? It's a great question.
That's a great question. It's, yeah, I'll take one slide, Clark at it, and then maybe Mike can as well. Look, I can't answer the question for a specific studio, or everybody's different, but generally speaking, no one likes a big bang, except maybe the creation of the earth. But you know, the way these systems are set up, like systems like FIlmTrack and others like it, and systems like Exactuals, that we have APIs, we have a whole API layer to make it easier to do what I call the new Darren, which is, if you remember Bewitched, the new Darren came in and nobody said anything. It was just a different actor, and the show continued. And so I call it the new Darren approach, you know, where, hey, there's a new rights management solution. As far as the accounting solutions, royalty solutions, no, nothing changed. New Darren is Darren. Now, slowly you may change the royalty solution. It depends on things like budget, culture, age of existing systems, pain points. In other words, can the existing systems not tolerate and perform the functions they need in order to meet the business need? If they can't, you got to deal with that. If they can, but hamstrung, well, you deal with that too. Mike, I don't know if you agree or thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the question sounded to me a bit like, do you recommend a big bang for moving the entire IT and financial ecosystem toward cloud at once? I would just say that's a recipe for like years and years and years and years and years of work, and potentially never getting comfortable with the output. So no, I would recommend a phased approach. To Jason's point, certain systems are going to fail in the next 5 years just with an inability to scale, either to meet the new types of contract requirements or just the sheer volume of what we're seeing in the space. So I think that starting with the systems that are actually at risk of interrupting your ability to do business, make payments, meet your obligations, whether it be to unions or participants, I would start there. From within the scope of, okay, we've made the decision to go from the old way to new Darren, to FIlmTrack. You can roll it out slowly over the course of a catalog, I'm sure, but there comes a point in time where there's enough testing done that you're fully confident, and there's value in just only having one system. You know, running a slow rollout of one system for a year to 2 years basically means double cost, double effort. So make sure it's bulletproof, make sure that it meets all of your requirements. And once you're confident that it does, then I support a big bang at the product level.
Yeah, I think that's prudent. And now is a good time. What we are seeing, I should have mentioned, is we're seeing some fairly large enterprises use this time to make some of those initiative choices to move, because they're seeing the stress on the existing systems. And from our standpoint, we'll support what the customer wants to do, but we certainly have a point of view on that.
It's tough from a studio perspective. I come from the retail and platform kind of side of the business, working at Microsoft and Amazon and some others. But my understanding is that those systems that are managing rights have grown up over decades, and there's like many of them that have different identifiers, and just the fact that they can get anything out that looks something like an avail is kind of a miracle, and involves a whole lot of MacGyver-esque.
And there's worlds built around them too. It's like a tree that grows with the around the house and the stone, because there's whole sub businesses built around that, and it can be, it's very challenging. I mean, the hardest part of any rights management system, frankly, is the implementation, is getting it, and that's why we're spending a lot on R&D and trying to improve the speed of how to move particularly from a legacy system that is every one of them custom and customized over a longer period of time. So you see it at the studio level, you see it at the mid-size level, and even at the small level. At a small sales agent or distributor, they may have had their cousin build a FileMaker system 15 years ago that they've been using. The cousin has now gone on to do something else with their lives, but they're living with this system. And you'd be surprised how often that's the case for fairly large companies. There are fairly large companies running access-based systems, Microsoft Access-based systems for their participations.
When we were early and still venture-backed and going out to meet with venture investors for rounds of equity financing for Exactuals, the big question was always, who is your competition? And the very sincere answer I had to give that would elicit some giggles, and then I'd have to explain it, was my biggest competitor is the way things have always been, and just getting businesses to change and evolve the systems that they've built up over time, even if they know they need to. Finding the right time and opportunity to make the shift is super critical, to Jason's point.
Okay, so we have another question here from Nona. Thank you, Nona. With all the new OTT platforms and original content being produced, how do you see this impacting exclusivity? Are we moving toward home entertainment, sell it everywhere, for all retailers, or back to exclusive windows like old network TV days?
Yeah, that's a great question. Exclusivity, used to be that's how you make what's effectively a, virtual piece of content. How do you make it? How do you limit it? It's a supply and demand element. It's an economic element by making it exclusive, right? If I've licensed this piece of content in the UK for English, you can be assured that I haven't licensed it to anybody else in the UK for English, right? That's your benefit. But now that first started getting broken down by the windows, obviously, and the windows themselves compressing, and then by the media itself. So, now I think it's a challenge a lot of the studios are going to deal with, and we're seeing it now, not just on the window collapse, but on the exclusivity collapse. The combination of those two things together are going to be very challenging. I think each studio will make their own decisions, but it does make it really hard when you've got 4 or 5 platforms effectively operating in the same space, and you can't really. It's really hard to make an argument for exclusivity. But there still will be for certain. It'll depend on the type of content too. We like to think that quality content will out, right? So high-end, good content that's well produced, that people want to see, that is binge worthy, all that sort of stuff. You would expect that to retain exclusivity, but that's actually a very small portion of the overall content on the planet. For every Killing Eve, there's a whole bunch of others that are not Killing Eve. So I think that'll be a challenge. It's an interesting question, and I think exclusivity will get narrower, I guess, is one way to think of it. In other words, I get exclusive. It used to be I get exclusive for Territory X. It's like I get exclusive for territory X for this platform. Now I get exclusive for territory X for this platform, for this language, for this date, and for these devices. You know, so it's going to keep getting narrower and narrower, and the consumer will, I think, ultimately drive that. Consumer behavior will drive that.
Yeah, content's kind of getting like, I mean, well, it has been, I guess, for a while, like water. You know, there's so much of it. It's everywhere, and you can get a lot of it for free. But you know, so if you want to try to make money on it, you need to make something better than what you can get for free.
Sure.
And you know, exactly to your point, you know, the cream of the crop, the best content, or the content that people want to watch the most, that has an opportunity for people to pay more for it. And those people could be the folks that are licensing your content, and that's what you get, an exclusive deal.
And we want to make sure that the people who
the
performers are getting paid. We want to make sure that the people, you know, there's got to be a whole cycle here, that people have to be incentivized to make content so that, you know, they're going to ultimately get paid. So we have to build the system such that, you know, the musicians, the writers, the actors, you know, feel like they're going to get compensated. So it's a whole world approach to it, and you want to ensure that there's a mechanism, a fast mechanism for both the consideration to be paid to the distributor, potentially to the licensor, and then back to the participants. And that's why Exactuals is so cool, because what that's doing is it's compressing not just the time, but the process by which the contributors can get paid. And the contributors ultimately are the people, you call them contributors, they're creators. You know, you know, the content doesn't exist without them.
Totally
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, to just build on that, you know, the biggest defense against piracy is letting people buy stuff when they want to buy it, where they want to see it. And, you know, we've seen in the last 10 years just so much change in the way that content is allocated, where you can find it. Is it going to be exclusive? Might you be able to license it in 3 or 4 different ways? The only thing I'm really sure of is that, to Jason's point, it's going to get more and more specific, and the volume of total deals is going to continue to be astronomically increased. And, you know, we have to protect the top line revenue and the money that goes out to the folks who funded the films and ultimately worked on them, which I know we will. But, you know, at a very macro level, I don't think there's ever been a time in history where more film and television has been consumed. So we certainly have a high quality issue of trying to navigate the best way to allow people to consume it over the next 5 to 10 years as we work to protect parts of the industry and give people what they want, let them pay, you know, when they want to pay to watch things.
Hey guys, I think we're going to take one more question. I think it's a perfect question to end with here. This is from Kyle. Curious where you both see SaaS rights management solutions going in the future. How to get even more out of one's data, aside from the ability to run avails reports at a granular level.
I think where rights are going to go is they're going to get deeper and deeper into financials. So you can't separate your rights management from your finance management because they're intertwined. They're one and the same. So I think you'll see that SaaS-based rights management solutions like FIlmTrack and others are going to get deeper and deeper into financials, whether it's relation to royalty processing, revenue recognition, their own general ledger, accounting, et cetera, because of the needs that we've been talking about for this past hour. I think you'll also see connections to things like what used to be traditionally scheduling systems, but now scheduling is not that linear scheduling anymore. It's more about the VOD scheduling, for lack of a better word. So I think you're going to see rights management be the centerpiece that goes out into different parts of the org, whether it's talent agreements on the one hand and the sort of inbound content as it's being contemplated and produced and all of the functions there and all the financials related to that, and then the outbound. So I think what used to be just a finance system, just a rights system, is going to transform into a finance system.
Building on that, I think that the data that comes out of these systems is going to be utilized in really new and different ways. There's absolutely gold information in the rights management systems for the purpose of what to sell where, and in more aggressive use cases, what to produce for which markets. And the data is strong and present. So I think that over time, the analytics portion of these platforms will extend and be used by new and different groups within the studio side and the sales agency world to basically make more money on the content they have and ensure a higher level of success with their production budgets.
Absolutely. Great point.
Cool.
And to Jason's point, just real quick before we end, for what it's worth, the sort of end-to-end vision we've hinted at for where FIlmTrack is headed with Exactuals is an integrated payment function, where if you've got a bank account at City National Bank and you use FIlmTrack, it'll be knitted together with Exactuals, and you'll be able to trigger payments right out of the platform and have them reconcile immediately back with your ERP and financial systems. And we're looking for, you know, that sort of first set of 10 clients that wants to help us bake out the future of rights management as it intertwines with financials and payments. So if that's kind of speaking your language, please reach out to either myself or to Jason. We'd love to talk to you more about what we're building and what the next 12 months will look like.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks so much. I want to thank our panelists, Jason Kassin of FIlmTrack and Mike Hurst from Exactuals. Great talk today. Really enjoyed it. I want to thank everybody for jumping on with us today to this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. We recorded the session, so you can watch it at your leisure from at the OTT.X YouTube channel. We'll have the PowerPoint presentation available also on our website shortly. I also want to invite everybody to attend the second in our on-live conference series, scheduled for July 21st and 22nd. The event will feature panels and presentations from experts, executives, and thought leaders across our industry. We'll focus on the strategies and business of OTT video delivery, including distribution, search, discovery, international distribution strategies, and managing advertising and sales execution. There's even a happy hour, so you won't want to miss it. As always, you can register for this and other OTT.X sessions at our website under events and programs. I've also dropped the online live site registration page right into the chat. So why not just pop over there right now and get yourself signed up. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.
Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Jason.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great one.
Thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
Be safe.